Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, we've got a very special guest today for you, Alexander Dunlop. Alexander Dunlop is the creator of thesourcecards.com and a spiritual life coach. His work is truly life-changing and are more than likely he's going to help you have greater insight into the patterns of your life. Welcome, Alexander Dunlop.
Catherine, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So, Alexander Dunlop, can you explain for our audience what exactly are the source cards?
Sure. The source cards are the name that we give to the real meaning of the deck of 52 playing cards. The same cards that we've all played card games with, Go Fish, Gin Rummy, Poker, these cards. These cards are actually an ancient language of life that come out of the flower of life and the tree of life. All the patterns on the faces of the cards come from the arrangement of the Kabbalistic tree of life. If you know that tree of life patterning, that's where all the imagery comes from on the face of the cards. It's a visual symbolic language, and it was hidden in plain sight. It was persecuted in the Middle Ages by the church. We called it the Devil's Picture Book. And that propaganda was so effective and so long lasting that even today people are a little bit leery of what are these cards and what about them? And what I've noticed is that even in very leading edge new age communities where people are very open-minded, even here people are a little skeptical. Like, what? Playing cards? Don't you mean the tarot cards? And don't these cards just come from the tarot cards? And the answer is no, they don't. Actually, these cards predate the tarot cards. These cards show the sacred geometric patterns, which are the building blocks of reality. Metatron's cube is the jack, the golden spiral, golden rectangle is the queen, and the phi symbol that represents the golden spiral, that's the king. These patterns are the very most basic building blocks of our reality. And it's as old as anything we know because the flower of life is the oldest known religious symbol we have. It's carved in ancient sites around the world and temples in Egypt and so on. And again, these patterns all come out of that flower of life. So it's as old as anything we know, and I only discovered it after a long spiritual quest of going through every other esoteric system of knowledge and religion. I had a long spiritual journey starting at age 17, where I had a surprising spiritual awakening on a retreat offered by my Roman Catholic high school. That's a long story in and of itself, which your audience can read a bit more about on my website, thesourcecards.com, if they want. But I really and truly studied everything and looked everywhere. I left no stone unturned. And much to my surprise, the answers I was looking for that made my life have sense, that gave me a aha moment of, oh, this is what my life is really about, was found in the deck of playing cards when I discovered that I'm born to play the Nine of Hearts. That's when my life made sense. Like, oh, that's the patterning of my life. That's who I am here to be and play out. That's the theme of my soul's journey in this lifetime. And so we can see it. It's literally all in the cards, pun intended. We can see these patterns and then we understand what makes us tick, what makes other people around us tick, why they do what they do, why we're challenged with what we're challenged with and other people aren't because we have different cards to play. Nine of Hearts, very emotional. I've struggled with my emotions in my life and grew up not knowing how to connect with my emotions. So it's been my adult journey to reconnect with my own emotional intelligence. And thank goodness I found out about these cards as a toolkit to assist me in my journey. I loved it so much that I decided I want to share this with everyone. And so I left behind my corporate career and started teaching and sharing the real meaning of the playing cards. And I wrote a book about it. And I'm an Amazon best-selling author with my book, Play Your Cards Right, A Sacred Guide to Life on Earth. Because it really is that. It is a sacred guidance system. I believe it was given to us by advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. I don't know that for sure. Maybe we'll find out soon enough. But I believe that's where this information comes from originally. Some very advanced civilization figured out how to map the energy patterns, energy frequencies in our quantum field, and then gave it to us and said, here's the map of your reality. Here's the map of your space-time existence. And, through many twists and turns and religious oppression and persecution, this knowledge survived somehow, luckily, miraculously. And it's starting to slowly come back to light now. And I believe it's coming back to us at this point in time because we're about to make a quantum shift in our evolution as a human species, and we're going to need this toolkit among other wonderful toolkits that already exist as well. We're going to need this toolkit to guide us in how to live in a more enlightened society, how to be more harmonious in how we interact with each other, how to not be at odds with ourselves. I mean, this is a fantastic toolkit for teenagers everywhere to know who they are. I have two teenagers as a parent, and they know their cards to play. And my daughter just the other day was telling me how grateful she is that she's grown up knowing her cards to play. So that's a brief overview. And yeah.
Okay. Now we're here today to talk about what we can all expect in the year 2025.
Hmm.
So, and I have a personal endorsement for Alexander Dunlop's wonderful work because his system has helped me understand myself as well as other people. And even though I'm a medical intuitive healer, it's like there's another layer of understanding that we can all receive by consulting Alexander Dunlop's very profound work. So, Alexander Dunlop, what can the source card share with us about what we can all expect in the year 2025?
Yeah, thank you. Well, 2025 is a 9 year, and we get that because we add the digits together, the two plus the zero plus the two plus the five, that adds up to nine. And that's sort of basic numerology. But what we know about the meaning of the nine, we know because we know the meaning of the nine through the source cards, we know the deeper layers and significance of the nine more so than you might get from just numerology. Because in the source cards, the nine is represented as a ladder. That's the symbolic patterning. I referenced the sacred geometric patterning of these cards. The pattern of the nine is a ladder. And on this ladder, you can climb up or you can climb down. It's Jacob's ladder. It's the ladder to heaven or the ladder to hell simultaneously. And so that's the meaning symbolically of the nine. In this 9 year, it's a ladder. And what that means in practical terms is that it can be a year of letting go, a year of completions. Something ends because this sequence ends, this chapter ends, and you're ready to climb the next rung, climb to the next level, to step up to another space, another chapter, another beginning. Numerologically, we get that from the fact that the nine is the last single digit. And so that in numerology, you get that same understanding of the completion of a cycle. But again, in the source cards, we know that the nine is a ladder. So that gives us more of a visual cue and a visual orientation of what we're looking at. Because stepping up can be scary, right? And people can be afraid of heights, symbolically and literally. When we're playing the nine, we're stepping up into rarefied terrain. We're stepping up to another level, and that can feel scary. And that's why we might cling on and hold on and be attached to an old story, an old pattern in our lifestyle, in our career, in our health, in our relationships, personal patterning. We may get stuck because we're scared to step up into unknown terrain. And then ironically and paradoxically, we may hold on even tighter to whatever we have right now in our life, whatever the comfort zone is that we're in our, again, in our career or relationships and so forth. We may hold on even tighter and even convince ourselves that the best strategy is to hold on tighter or just to keep plowing ahead and let me double down and I'll work harder and I'll try even harder. I'll bulldoze this even more. I'll set more goals. I'll be more determined and more accountable. But that actually blocks us when we're in a 9 year and having a nine experience. We don't want to double down and hold on even tighter. It's actually a year to let go and release that grip, and then we can ascend. It's an ascension, the nine. And it happens effortlessly, or it can happen effortlessly. It does not need to be challenging or difficult. Because it is a 9 year, things are going to present themselves that show us that something's over. It's going to be revealed to us. And we can accept that gracefully or not. And that's our free will. Nothing about this information contradicts our free will. We always have free will. What it does do is it gives us more information. So we can see, oh, this is what's happening. It gives us a lens with which to interpret the sequence of events so that we're not interpreting it wrongly and thinking again, oh, maybe I need to hold on more tightly here. Something shows up for us this year, and it may be a lot of things, it may be all of the above, career, relationships, health, personal life, and maybe in every category. Something will present itself to us this year as an ending, as a completion. And that's the signal that, oh, we're done here and it's time to step up. It's time to evolve. It's time to grow past this. It's time to transcend this. So that's the opportunity that the nine presents us. And the source cards, again, show us that it's a ladder where it is a stepping up. It's not a sideways move, it's a step up. And again, that step up can mean that we're scared to step up into a higher rung, to a higher level. And that fear is what can block us.
Now, Alexander Dunlop, great insight. And I really appreciate this because I usually at the beginning of every year I set goals for myself. And it, 5 goals typically, a reasonable amount that I can really focus. But as I was tuning into the energy of 2025, I was like, no, that's not the right approach. And then I learned from you that this is all about letting go. It's like, okay, that all makes sense. So, what happened the last time that we all experienced a 9 year? Because again, this is universal,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yes, it is. So that's a great question, and I'll lead into the answer on that by saying that I think it was just as we're recording just yesterday that Justin Trudeau resigned as Prime Minister of Canada. That was a big one. I hadn't followed that too closely, but that was a surprise to me, at least. That's a sudden letting go. It's a sudden, the leader of Canada is just suddenly resigning, not waiting till the election cycle in the middle of his term or, in his term, he's resigning. Well, that's a nine experience. When a world leader resigns, they're letting go. Like, I'm done here. Now, so that's something that's very interesting. We're only, a few days into the year, and already we're seeing the power of the nine and the collective geopolitical space. We can expect more of that this year, more letting goes, more completions, more endings. The last time we were in a 9 year was 2016. So again, you add the numbers 2, 1, 6, and you get nine. The last time we were in a 9 year was 2016. That was the year of Brexit. That was the year where England said, no more. We're done here. We're letting go of this, and we're going to transcend this. We're going to move on. It took, of course, many years for that to be finalized, but that referendum, that first vote, happened in 2016. So that's what happened in Europe. What happened in America in 2016 was Donald Trump's upset victory over Hillary Clinton. And that really upended politics as we know it in America. And that was definitely an ending of that kind of establishment politics that had dominated American life for a long time. and a step up into a whole new terrain, like unexplored territory. What is this? Who is this reality TV star who's now president? What does that mean for us? So we all kind of entered novel terrain. We all stepped into a whole new world, and that's something we can look for in this year of the 9 year, that we're going to have these endings. Old establishment things are going to be finished. Something brand new is going to enter. We're going to all be challenged, maybe, or forced to step up into new terrain, but we're ready for it. It's time because we know it's time because it's a 9 year. So hopefully, in knowing that, we can all be a little more gracious and graceful about it, a little bit more accepting of the endings, whatever the ending is, and whatever that brand new beginning presents itself as. Hopefully, we can be a little more accepting of that.
And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Alexander Dunlop, spiritual life coach at thesourcecards.com, and we're learning about what we can all expect in the energy and this transition time of 2025. We'll be right back. Alexander Dunlop. Here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, I have the great privilege of interviewing world leading experts like yourself in natural healing. And interestingly, in 2024, we started period 9 in Feng Shui. So I did an interview with a lady named Qatar Diamond. And period 9 in Feng Shui is a new 20-year period, which very much mirrors what you're talking about, where it's a fire element period where old structures are, it can be expected to be dissolved. How does the 9 year we're all experiencing in 2025 mirror or differ from what you're seeing from this shift in feng shui?
Well, I'm not an expert on feng shui, but what you're saying in that brief introduction resonates and makes sense. The um, the idea of the 9 is that there are completions and endings that may not be always welcome. I mean, certainly Donald Trump's victory in 2016 was not welcomed by the establishment that did not want to give up their power, their king-making power. All the elites, media elites, etc., political elites were well accustomed to having the authority and the power to be kingmakers, to determine who is going to be the next president. And all of that got upended. That was finished. And the American people collectively said, no more. We don't want that anymore. We want that to be ended. We actually want our voice back. That's how I would interpret what happened. And that's very much in tune with what you're describing from the feng shui analysis that you mentioned, and also the 9 energy, that when things end, the people who are attached to it and gain their power and authority from it, and maybe their financial gain and their career from it, they're not too pleased about that usually. They have a lot at stake. So that's where the rumbling and the friction can occur, where whatever that old is doesn't want to go quietly into the night. And that can be for us personally too. Whatever old aspects of us, old habits die hard, as the saying goes. For us personally too, it can be, depending on how attached we are to certain patterns within ourselves, certain habits. When life presents us with, no, that's over, that's time for that to end, depending on how attached we are to it, is how difficult that ending can be for us. And then, yes, we can see that played out on the world stage as well. And again, look for more of that this year, where old powers may be trying their best to hold on to their power. They may not be ready to say, yeah, we're done. We give up. We're ready to let go of power. That unfortunately often doesn't happen gracefully. So that's where the friction comes in. That's where the rumblings come in. That's where it can seem more like it's a fire or a firestorm or a shitstorm, another terminology for it. Um, and so it can be an unpleasant transition, but it doesn't have to be for us personally. But on the world stage, we can expect that it may be a little bit of there may be some fireworks, let's say.
Now, here in natural healing, at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, one of the things we understand is how every organ and every acupuncture meridian has emotions associated with it. So when we're talking about the large intestine, the organ in your body, and the large intestine meridian, there's a beautiful affirmation for large intestine, which is, I joyfully release the past to make the space for beneficial change. And I'll say that again. I joyfully release the past to make the space for beneficial change. Now, this is, of course, easier said than done. So, in your professional opinion, how can we all get better at letting go of all that no longer serves us?
Well, that's a great question, and I was feeling into that mantra that you were saying. Isn't it interesting that the function of the large intestine is to help us pass the food, pass the old, and if it doesn't, if we get compacted and constipated, that's very painful and dangerous to our health. So the whole point of the intestine is to let things pass right through smoothly and gracefully. And I guess to answer your question, what's coming to me in this moment is it's helpful to know that we've already absorbed all the nutrients we need to from this experience. I'll make the analogy to the function of the intestines since you brought that in,
Yeah.
which I really like that analogy. That if we remind ourselves that we've already sucked all the nutrients, all the meaning out of this current experience, then perhaps it'll be easier for us to simply let it pass in the same way that we hope our intestines function to absorb all the nutrients we need and then simply let it pass and let it pass smoothly. That perhaps just by reminding ourselves of the function of the intestines, that may help us in our mindset.
Yeah. And I have a practical suggestion. When you realize that you're stuck, a really good place, and this is very simple, but we can all do it, is to start with decluttering
Hmm.
because it's about really recognizing, okay, I don't need this anymore. It's been hanging around, yeah. And I was so looking forward to this interview because 2 days ago, my father passed. And everybody's got a different kind of father. My father was mentally, emotionally, physically abusive. And then in a few days, one of my childhood homes is literally going to be torn down. So we're really talking about letting go, right? And letting go. Now,
Well, that's I'll just pause for a moment to say that that is a nine experience. That's exactly what we might expect to occur during this 9 year. It's happened for you immediately in the year. As soon as the year became a 9 year, it's now you're confronted with this big ending and completion in your life. How do you feel about it?
I can say about 25 different emotions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, and it hasn't been easy, right? It's kind of surprising all the emotions that come up when we start letting go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think now you're also answering the question that you posed of why it can be difficult to let go, why it may not be easy, is we get surprised by all the emotions that pop up, all the buried, suppressed emotions that suddenly are no longer hidden because everything comes to the surface. It's over, it's finished, and it all bubbles to the surface at the same time. That also can be maybe why it's difficult, is that suddenly we're confronted with all the old emotions that come back. And yeah, so that may present an opportunity for healing, self-reflection, that introspective process. For someone like you may be easier. You've done the work, you know how to do that. But for other people, they may not know at all how to deal with all those old emotions that come up. I was just listening to a podcast last night where someone got fired from his job, and he was saying that it led him into suicidal ideations, and for 3 years he didn't know what to do with himself. You know, in our society, the way we operate, we don't have a good container, mindset, social comprehension of what it's like to deal with endings. It's just, well, it's tragic. That's the only kind of socially cultural way that we look at endings, is that's a tragedy. But we all go through endings all the time, some bigger, smaller than others. And here you are going through a big ending in your life. And luckily you have more tools at your disposal than other people and how to deal with that ending. But still, it's a lot to deal with.
Absolutely. And another affirmation for large intestine is I joyfully release, I joyfully and easily release all that no longer serves me, right? So that's why I said if you realize, okay, I'm stuck here, if you just start with a drawer, sometimes a room is too much, but just like just the physical process of going, okay, I need this. I haven't used this thing in the past 5 years. Maybe it's time to let it go. That gets the energy moving, right? When we're stuck.
Yes, for sure. And the outer world mirrors the inner world. And sometimes the easier place to start is in the outer world. And then that helps us declutter internally what we need to declutter.
Now, Alexander Dunlop, as you know, many people typically set goals for themselves at the beginning of a new year. And then it's a good idea, to set goals. All right, this year I want to lose weight or get healthier, for example. And then they try to use personal willpower to make those goals happen. Why is a different approach called for in 2025?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot to say about goal setting and why it doesn't work. But I won't go into all of that for right now, just to address your question more directly. In a 9 year, the goals come through transcendence, through rising above, as we talked about a bit earlier. The idea of steaming ahead and we're going to just go full speed ahead after our goals doesn't work in a 9 year, because the nine is again about letting go and rising above. And if we're going after our goals with gusto and we're going to just drive ahead and we're going to use willpower and we're going to have accountability and responsibility, what can happen is that we actually get stuck on something that would be much better for us to let go and rise above. Um, so it can be very counterproductive to have that mindset during a 9 year of I'm going to go after my goals and I'm going to hustle harder and I'm just going to get up earlier and do more. Because all that can happen in that case is that you're holding on more tightly to something that you'd be much better served to let go of. And also, the other reason why that doesn't work in a 9 year is because, again, it's an ending. It's an ending and closing of a chapter. Rather than driving harder for your current goals, it's more about in a 9 year listening and observing what is it that's ending for me this year? And how can I accept that ending gracefully and welcome that ending and see that it's actually a graduation moment for me? It's not tragic. It's a graduation. It's a liberation. I'm being released and set free from this chapter of my life, from this bad habit, from this old pattern, from this job that didn't really make me happy, from these relationship dynamics that didn't really nurture me. It's about listening. How can I receive the ending and the completion this year and receive it gracefully and rise above, transcend, graduate, evolve to the next level of my own experience, of my own reality? So in a 9 year, it's a much better strategy to simply be aware, be observant, be listening, be receptive, which can be hard to do if we're focused on go, 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 harder, harder, faster, faster. That's the opposite of being in a receptive state.
Great information. And one of my 10 books is called Unlimited Energy Now, and nothing drains your energy faster than pushing against a brick wall, right? Yeah. I listen to all kinds of people, and there are a lot of coaches, push harder, 10x it. Just like you said, get up earlier, try harder, run faster, starve yourself more.
Sure.
Yeah. And, as a healer with 31 years experience, I can honestly say one of the most powerful healings you can ever do, and one of the most powerful intentions you can ever set is I let go and allow God to heal me. I let go and allow God to heal me. And when you do that, it's not passive at all.
Mhm.
It's not passive at all. You are, as you say, you're really listening and going, okay, I've tried it my way. I've tried it my way for a long time, this pushing, shoving, straining, starving, efforting, with my ego self. But when I let go and allow the God, divine to guide me, that's when, true miracles occur.
Absolutely. 100%. That's the benefit of this awareness of the nine energy. As I mentioned earlier, it's a ladder. It's symbolic of the ability to climb up to heaven. And the only way we climb up is by letting go. And that's a paradox. It's the expression, let go, let God, which you alluded to, that we realize, okay, I can't do it by my own willpower. I'm going to let go of that efforting mindset. But as you say, it isn't passive at all. It's an active listening. It's an active allowing. It's an active receiving. It's an active tuning in to what life is presenting you, to what maybe your higher self is showing you, what God is teaching you, whatever languaging we want to say for that, where we're allowing something that's much bigger than our brain can comprehend to mold us and shape us and transform us from the inside out. We're letting go of our old identity. That's fundamentally what we're always letting go of, whatever we're thinking we're letting go of in our career, relationships, etc. We're always letting go of an old identity. And that is an ego construct in the Eastern philosophic terms. Our identity is what we're letting go of. So we let go of that identity, and then a whole new reality emerges for us, and that's the transcendence. That's the evolution to the next level.
Very profound information. And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. And we're listening to Alexander Dunlop, spiritual life coach, help us understand how to let go, how to let go and evolve to the next level. We'll be right back. Alexander Dunlop. As you know, our shadow is the unintegrated aspect of your ego, which you mentioned earlier, that letting go is always about letting go of our old identity. How can we heal aspects of our shadow this year to move forwards in 2025?
That's a big question. That's the million-dollar question, so to speak, right there. How can we heal our shadow? I'll explain it all in two sentences and it'll be complete. And then you never need to learn anything else about healing your shadow because it's that easy. We can just talk about it and it'll be done. Obviously, I'm being a little facetious because the healing of the shadow that's the heroic journey. That's the depths going into facing our own demons, the things that we're most scared of in ourselves. And it's a lifelong journey. But it may be accentuated this year in a 9 year because what we're letting go of, as you mentioned already, like the old emotions coming up, things buried, coming out of your own depths, coming out of your own inner closets and dark spaces. Whenever we're confronted with an ending, that shadowy stuff surfaces. And rising above and stepping up to the next level, which is what we do to play the nine well, does always mean first going down into our depths. We climb down the ladder first, and that's just the way it goes. I didn't create this reality. I didn't set up the design of it. That's how it goes. We climb down first. And again, that's all heroic journeys talk about that descent, where you descend into chaos or you descend into the shadowy place. That's where you find the dragon. The dragon guards the treasure in the mythological theme of the heroic journey. There is a treasure to be found in our own shadows. So, to use you as an example again, Catherine, and your telling of what you're experiencing with your dad's passing the last few days, I imagine that you'll face within yourself some shadows of emotional things and stuff and in your psyche and your memories. All these things in the shadows will come up. There's a treasure in there for you. There's something beautiful for you to find. If only that you find out that you're liberated from all of that. Like there's something there that you'll find in that first descent into your own shadows when all that shadowy stuff comes up. And it's by going into those shadows, by descending into those shadows, by embracing the process, by welcoming them, not pushing it away, not trying to avoid it, not trying to bury yourself in work to avoid dealing with these shadowy emotions, as you know, not telling you anything you don't already know, but for the sake of your audience, that by facing all of this within yourself, by accepting it all, embracing this process, that's how you find something beautiful and meaningful in the process. And that's the pathway to ascension. That's the pathway to growth. That's the pathway to step to the next level is by first going down into the shadows. So again, for your listeners, for the audience, we may all have some shadowy experiences this year. And that's how life may present the ending. It may first, again, seem a little tragic, a little shadowy, dark. It's uncertain. Oh, this is ending. Something in my life is coming to an end. And that can bring up a lot of existential fears. We're not secure. Uh-oh, how am I going to make money? Or uh-oh, what's this going to mean for my marriage? Or so on. These shadowy fears come to the surface. It's important to face them and to go into them, to find out what they have to teach us, what we need to get from that experience. And in that, we find a treasure. We find something valuable and meaningful for ourselves that allows us then to ascend to the next level.
Brilliant information. And, for myself, I've just been sitting with myself and I like let myself sit and cry and let all those memories come up. It's not fun, right? But as I always say, the quickest way through the mud is often through the mud,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now Carl Jung said the only way to live in the light is by constantly knowing where our shadow is. And for our audience, I just want to share your shadow is never going to go away, right? I remember working with a client and she wanted to get rid of her shadow completely, which is just a really frankly bad idea. It's like, okay, here we are. I understand you, but there is an energy healing technique that because you don't want your shadow to be in charge, right? Because if my ego's driving the bus, then my higher self is no longer driving the bus. There's a simple little energy healing technique, and I'm going to take off my glasses. On the left side of your temple, right where your eyebrow right at the very end of your eyebrow, if you draw a circle, doesn't matter which way you go, you draw the circle and then you put an X through it. And that is an energy healing technique that just says to your shadow, okay, go sit in the corner for a moment. I want my higher self to make these choices, right? So there's a dance and a balance between really listening to what's coming up so that you can let it go and then saying, okay, let me not allow this shadow to ruin my life.
Well, that's right. We're always dancing with our shadow, and the shadow never goes away because we're always, whatever we focus on, our consciousness, there's another aspect that our consciousness doesn't see. We're not infinite beings. We have finite consciousness. So if you imagine your consciousness as a flashlight, you're shining your light in a certain direction, there's always going to be an aspect of reality that your consciousness doesn't touch at any moment. Again, we're not infinite beings. We're finite in our consciousness. So there's always a shadow. And dancing with the shadow for me has meant, and I'm still learning this myself, has meant to not be afraid of what's in the shadow. That's people are afraid of what they can't see, what's not in their consciousness. But in fact, if we can look at the shadow as the place where the treasure is, as the place where we'll discover all kinds of new and wonderful things about life and about ourselves, then we don't have to be afraid of the shadow. And then we're not putting our fear, we're not projecting our fear onto the shadow. And then we're not having those fearful experiences in our shadow either.
Great information. Now, Alexander Dunlop, I'm a gardener, and sometimes I look at my garden and it's like, oh my goodness, this is so glorious. It's so beautiful. I just want to keep it this way right now. And yet, when we study nature, the only thing that is constant is change. How can we all get better at flowing through the natural cycles of life? Because this is part of what your work is about is, now we're doing this and then we're doing that. It's the cycle of life.
Well, I think to answer your question, the first step is to simply know that there are cycles.
Hmm.
Um, for all the wonderful benefits of our empirical, rational, westernized mindset, which has given us all this great technology, for all of the benefits that we have from this mindset that comes out of the biblical monotheistic tradition, where we're going to go forth, be fruitful, multiply, subdue, and conquer. That mindset, which still undergirds all this technological innovation and growth that we have, so we can talk to each other on these computers, on this technology across the continent. All that wonderful technology comes out of a mindset that's a very mechanistic, rationalized mindset that totally divorces us from the rhythms and cycles of nature. So it comes at a price.
Hmm.
Everything comes at a price. There's a cost to our rational, empirical, technologically driven mindset. And that is that we're out of touch with our own cycles, the cycles of life, the cycles of the moon, yearly cycles, all of it. And so it's important to get back in touch with those cycles. I think we can have both. There's no reason why we can't have technological advancement and innovation and be in harmony with the cycles of life. So, to answer your question, it's a fundamental shift at a very deep level, at the deepest level possible of our collective consciousness to get back in touch with the cycles of life and the cycles of nature, which we have disconnected ourselves from, which for thousands of years were disparaged by the biblical monotheistic tradition as pagan, as heathen, or maybe you were even a witch if you were practicing being in harmony with the cycles of life. all of that harmony with nature was disparaged and excommunicated and pushed to the shadows and hidden in the shadows because it was thought to be antithetical to this biblical monotheistic truth where there's a one truth and a one size fits all. And under this banner, we will conquer. And so all of the natural rhythms were demolished and covered over, and we poured concrete over all of that in the name of being conquerors of nature, which again, we got out of this biblical monotheistic tradition that we need to conquer nature. And we need to unconquer. We need to let that go, pun intended. We need to let go of that mindset that we can conquer the cycles of nature and we can impose our will on these cycles. We can't. We suffer from it. We're alienated from it. As Thoreau said, we lead lives of quiet desperation as a result because we're just out of tune and out of sync, and then we don't get the meaning that we could and the pleasure from the cycles and appreciating the cycles of life. So it's a fundamental shift. It's a big one to have that awareness of the cycles of life.
So, Alexander Dunlop, I personally can't thank you enough for your amazing insights in this interview. For our audience, you can find out more about Alexander Dunlop and his wonderful work at thesourcecards.com. My name is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. And remember, when we're in tune with the flow of life, letting go is part of evolving to the next level. And when we let go and let God, that's when natural healing occurs. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.